Have you ever felt like nobody cares, like you're suffering inside, trying to hold it all together alone, and even God seems silent? As if you pray, wait, hope, but nothing changes? Maybe you've reached a point where you feel emotionally exhausted, mentally drained, and spiritually empty. You try to be strong, but deep down there's a silent thought: does anyone even see what I'm going through? If you've ever felt alone, rejected, or like your pain is invisible, you're not alone. And more importantly, you haven't been forgotten. There are moments in life when silence seems louder than the pain itself. When anxiety grows, when faith weakens, when you begin to wonder where God is in the midst of your suffering. Perhaps you are asking yourself, why does it seem like no one cares about me, or God, where are you now? If this is your case, stay with me until the end. What you are about to hear may change the way you see everything you are experiencing, because there's a powerful moment in the Bible, in Mark 3 verse 5, where Jesus is about to perform a miracle. But before that, he does something unexpected. He stops. He looks around in silence. And what the Bible reveals next is something most people simply don't realize. It says that Jesus looked with indignation and sadness at the same time. Why would Jesus feel that way just before healing someone? Why would he stop when there is someone clearly suffering before him? Before you give up, you need to understand this. There's something Jesus does before the miracle that reveals how God sees your pain, even when it seems like he's not responding. And what you're about to discover might surprise you. And perhaps, as you listen to this, something inside you is identifying with it, as if this message is reaching a place you couldn't even explain. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. It could be a phrase, a feeling, or even something you're experiencing in silence. Sometimes, putting it into words is the beginning of something healing from within. And if you've ever gone through times when you felt like nobody cared, or are going through that now, share this too. You may not realize it, but your comment could reach someone who is in exactly the same pain, needing to know they're not alone. If this message resonates with you in any way, click like. This helps this content reach more people who are feeling lost, tired, or about to give up. Sometimes, a simple video like this appears at the right time in someone's life, and can make all the difference. And if you want to continue receiving this type of message, subscribe to the Jesus Beyond Words channel. Here, the idea is not just to talk about faith, but to bring understanding, direction, and hope in moments when everything seems confusing. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. Now, there's something very specific happening at that moment when Jesus looks around, something that reveals much more than meets the eye. That moment in Mark 3 verse 5 is not just an isolated detail. It's a revelation laden with meaning that many people overlook. Imagine the scene: Jesus is standing before a man with a withered hand, someone clearly suffering, limited, waiting for transformation. Around him, several people are observing, some with expectation, others with judgment, others simply curious. Everything seems ready for an immediate miracle. But, instead of acting right then, Jesus stops. This silence is not empty, it is intentional. It carries an almost invisible tension, as if something deeper were happening behind the scenes of that moment. Jesus looks around. He doesn't speak, doesn't touch, doesn't move quickly. He observes. And this completely breaks human logic. Because, when we see someone suffering, we want to solve it immediately, act quickly, end the pain. But Jesus doesn't react like that. And this raises an uncomfortable question. Why would he pause when someone needs help right there, in front of him? The answer begins to touch on something that goes beyond the external situation. It's not just about the withered hand. There's a hidden truth in that environment, something related to the mentality of the people around, to their intentions, to the hardness of heart that isn't visible at first glance. Jesus' gaze isn't focused only on the physical problem, but on something deeper, more structural, something that directly influences the impact of that miracle. And perhaps here's a point that connects directly to your own journey. How many times have you felt that God is silent, as if nothing is happening? As if he were just looking around, without acting? This pause, which seems like absence, may be carrying a kind of preparation, a deeper reading of the situation, something that is not yet clear on the surface. What happens in that instant completely changes how we understand response, timing, and transformation. And when you begin to see that, you realize that perhaps God's silence was never an inaction, but part of something much greater that is being built. Comment below. This makes sense to me. What happens next completely changes how we interpret this moment. The text reveals that Jesus looked around with indignation and sadness at the same time. And that is extremely rare. It's not a common reaction. It's not something superficial. There is an emotional depth there that carries a powerful message about how he sees people and the environment around him. He realized that it wasn't anger directed at the man who was suffering. Jesus wasn't angry with the person who needed help. Quite the opposite. The sadness shows compassion, shows sensitivity, shows that he felt the pain of that situation. But the indignation, that was directed elsewhere, toward the hardened hearts of the people who were there, watching everything, but without empathy, without sensitivity, trapped in judgments, in closed minds, incapable of recognizing what really mattered. And this reveals something very powerful about what went on behind the scenes of that miracle. Because, at that moment, the biggest obstacle wasn't the withered hand, it was the hardness of heart around it. It was the invisible resistance that prevented the transformation from fully happening. And that's why this scene carries such a great impact. Jesus wasn't ignoring the pain. He was confronting what was preventing the miracle from flowing. This truth changes the way we see many situations in our own lives. Because sometimes what seems like delay, silence, or even a lack of response can actually be a necessary confrontation with something deeper. A change of mindset, a breaking of patterns, an internal preparation that hasn't yet fully taken place. And when you start to realize this, everything takes on a new meaning. What seemed like just a delay might be connected to something being adjusted behind the scenes, something essential for the transformation to be real and lasting. Comment below. This makes sense to me. This starts to make even more sense when you bring this reality into your own life. How many times have you caught yourself thinking, why does God seem silent when I need Him most? Or why does nothing change, even when I pray, even when I try to do everything right? These questions are not weak, they are real. They are part of the journey of those who are tired, who have already tried, who are dealing with loneliness, with anxiety, with that constant feeling of being invisible. There are days when it feels like you're fighting alone, trying to hold on to the faith while everything inside is crumbling. You try to move forward, but the relapses return, the thoughts weigh you down, and that doubt begins to grow. Is God really seeing this? Does He even care? And it's precisely here that this truth begins to shift your perspective. Because perhaps the silence you feel isn't absence, but part of a process happening behind the scenes. Sometimes, God pauses not because He doesn't care, but because there's something deeper that needs to be addressed before the transformation truly happens. Something in your mindset, your emotions, your decisions that still needs to be aligned for the impact to be complete. And that doesn't mean your pain is being ignored. On the contrary, it means it's being taken seriously on a level you may not yet be able to fully see. When you feel like nobody cares, that might be precisely when God is working in unseen places, preparing something that goes beyond what you asked for. This realization changes everything, because it takes you out of the feeling of abandonment and puts you in a process of building. It's not about being forgotten, it's about being prepared. Write this down, I'm on this journey too. Jesus' gesture at that moment reveals something that completely changes how we understand pain, response, and transformation. When He looks around before acting, He is showing that God is not limited to what is visible. While everyone was focused on the withered hand, Jesus was seeing something deeper, something that wasn't outwardly apparent but directly influenced what was about to happen. This reveals a hidden truth that many people ignore. God doesn't just treat the symptom, He goes to the root. He's not only interested in solving the external problem, but in transforming what is sustaining that problem. And that's why, often, the process seems slower than we would like. Because there is work happening behind the scenes, a silent reconstruction of the mindset, emotions, and decisions that shape your journey. Before restoring the hand, Jesus exposed hardened hearts. And this was not by chance, it was necessary. Because without this confrontation, the miracle would only be momentary, without depth, without lasting impact. And when you bring this into your life, you begin to realize that perhaps some answers haven't arrived yet because something more internal is being worked on, not as punishment, but as preparation. God's silence has never been abandonment. It can be a space for adjustment, alignment, and internal transformation that is not yet complete. Sometimes, what you are asking for is already on its way, but you are not yet ready to sustain what is to come, or the environment around you is not yet prepared to fully receive it. And when you understand this, your perspective changes. Waiting ceases to be merely frustrating and takes on a purpose. The process stops being confusing and begins to reveal intention. And this changes how you react, how you decide, how you move forward. Comment below. Now I understand. This leads to a point that can completely reposition how you see what you are experiencing today. Perhaps you interpreted the silence as rejection, as distance, as if God had distanced Himself precisely when you needed Him most. But what if the hidden truth behind this is something else? What if, in reality, you were never beyond His reach, only within a process that is not yet finished? There's a type of transformation that doesn't happen in a noisy or rushed manner. It happens behind the scenes, where internal decisions are adjusted, where mindsets begin to shift, where invisible things are aligned to generate real impact. And that's not always comfortable, because it demands patience, it demands trust, it demands continuing even without fully understanding what's happening. But it is precisely at this point that something begins to change within you. When you stop interpreting silence as abandonment and begin to see it as purpose, your attitude changes. Your journey takes on a new meaning. You stop fighting against the process and begin to walk with it, even if you don't yet see all the results. God has not ignored you, He has not left you behind. What you are experiencing now may be part of something bigger, something that is still being built with precision, with intention. And even if it seems slow, even if it seems invisible, that doesn't mean it's stopped. It means it's being prepared. Jesus sees your pain. He understands every detail of what you feel, every doubt, every moment of weakness. And even when it seems that He is silent, He is not absent. There is presence, there is movement, there is purpose, even if you cannot yet see everything clearly. And perhaps, from now on, you will begin to notice small signs, small changes, things that previously went unnoticed, but which are part of this larger construction. Comment below, I choose to trust. And if you've made it this far, it's because, somehow, this message found a real place within you. It wasn't just another video, it was something that touched you, that made you think, that perhaps even brought a little clarity amidst everything you're going through. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing to the Jesus Beyond Words channel. The idea here is precisely to continue bringing this kind of understanding, not only about the Bible, but about how to apply these truths to real life, in the moments when we most need guidance. And so I know you stayed with me until the end. Write in the comments, this message was for me. It's something simple, but it creates a very strong connection between those who are going through similar processes. If this content helped you in any way, leave a like. It shows that this type of message needs to continue reaching more people who are experiencing exactly what you are experiencing today. And there's a video here that complements everything we've talked about. It delves even deeper into this idea of how God works behind the scenes. Click on it and continue watching.